Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Heather, tell me how you feel about Blake Lively.
Sure. Blake Lively is someone who I feel like, I've grown up with. She's my contemporary.
Are you guys the same age?
Yes, we're the same age.
Heather Schwedel covers culture for Slate. And I wanted her to come into the studio and explain the Hollywood story that has been dominating my news feed. But before we did that, we had to talk about the person at the center of it, Blake Lively. Blake Lively is the kind of beautiful, ubiquitous actor that you'd recognize even if you don't know her. She's married to Ryan Reynolds. That's Deadpool to you. She's good friends with Taylor Swift. But she also has this spiky reputation that's hard to sum up. Like she and Ryan Reynolds, they got married on a plantation, which is not a great look. She relentlessly shills her hair care products and her booze brand. In other words, she's both popular and kind of sus, as the kids say.
I think it kind of goes back to her image in Gossip Girl. She played this Queen Bee character who was the queen of the Upper East Side, and she was beautiful and popular and kind of scary. And I think that has always informed her public image. It's kind of hard to wrest her away from roles like that she's played.
The drama Heather and I are about to unfold started with a movie release and a mystery. The movie release was It Ends With Us. Came out in August. The mystery was why the film was being promoted so strangely. Blake Lively and her co-star, Justin Baldoni, you see, they weren't promoting it together.
There started to be, analysis on TikTok that spilled over into the mainstream press that was like, what's going on? There's some drama between the stars.
Okay, guys, let's talk about the controversy around the release of It Ends With Us.
Then some reporting came out about maybe there was a rift on set, there were creative differences.
And there has been so much drama with this movie, and I feel bad for Justin Baldoni. He is the producer.
But there was a certain point where it just felt like the narrative shifted, and it wasn't about, there's this mysterious feud anymore. It was, Blake Lively kind of sucks. Like, the conversation just sort of shifted towards that.
Well, we've got some personal branding drama with Blake Lively, but not just personal branding drama, marketing drama as well. Let's dig into it. For those of you new here, I'm Elena.
People started dredging up old clips of Lively, where she seemed full of attitude. One journalist recirculated an awkward tape and called it the Blake Lively interview that made me want to quit my job. Back when it was recorded, Lively was pregnant with her second child.
The journalist had said, congratulations on your little bump. And Blake Lively had sort of shot back at her, congratulations on your little bump, even though this woman wasn't pregnant.
Such a weird response. So strange.
Yeah. And I mean, once that quote unquote evidence was out there, it just seemed like a free-for-all of, I've never liked her. Just all this discussion of things she's done in her past.
You wrote this article at the time that was titled, "Okay, fine, I'll be the one to defend Blake Lively." What did you suspect back then? Why did you want to write this?
I had noticed this conversation, and it seemed it just seemed like overkill to me. I mean, as the headline implies, I'm not a huge fan of Blake Lively and had never really been. But when it seemed like the whole internet was focused on hating her, it seemed wrong to me.
Eventually, all the gossip over what happened during the filming of this movie kind of died down. But then just before Christmas, there was this article in the New York Times, and in a lot of ways, it confirmed your suspicions. Like, it alleged that Blake Lively's co-star in It Ends With Us had been part of a publicity campaign to bring Lively down. And I sort of wonder, when you read about this, did you feel vindicated? Like, aha, I was right.
I wish. I mean, more, I felt called out because I had never suspected that there was a campaign behind it because I just thought this was a conversation that had arisen on its own, because this does kind of happen a lot where everyone online decides they hate one person, often a woman. And I felt implicated in the whole thing, where I feel like we were all part of this.
Today on the show, how did so many people turn on Blake Lively? The latest on Tinseltown's juiciest lawsuit and countersuit. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
The Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist, whether you're running, swimming, or sleeping. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. The Apple Watch Series 10, available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generations, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
Okay, I want to tell this whole twisted tale from the beginning, and it all starts with the movie at the center of it. It Ends With Us. It's based on this novel by author Colleen Hoover. Can you explain what the book and movie are about? It's about domestic violence, right?
Yes. So right there in the name, It Ends With Us refers to kind of the cycle of domestic violence. So it tells the story of a woman who, when she was in high school, there was domestic violence in her family between her mom and dad. And then she grows up and she becomes involved in a relationship that at first seems like this beautiful love story, but eventually it turns violent, and her boyfriend and then husband is violent towards her.
As a sister, I wish more than anything that you could find a way to forgive him. But as your best friend, Lily, if you take him back, I will never speak to you again.
And it's about breaking the cycle. It has to end with us.
Obviously, Blake Lively was the star of this movie. Her co-star, though, Justin Baldoni, may be less familiar to my listeners. So I'm wondering if you can introduce me to him. And he actually owned the rights to this film since 2019. So why was a film like this important to Justin Baldoni? How did it fit into who he is as a performer?
Yeah, Justin Baldoni, I think, is best known for starring in Jane the Virgin, which was a show that was on the CW a few years ago. It was sort of an American telenovela. It was a love story. He was one of the main people in the central love triangle. And then after that, he moved into directing, or maybe during that as well. I think he directed some episodes. And he also positioned himself as a feminist ally. He had a podcast and wrote some books.
He gave a TED Talk too, right?
Yes. He talked about how men should be more involved in feminism.
This is the script that we've been given, right? Girls are weak and boys are strong. Well, I came here today to say, as a man, that this is wrong, this is toxic, and it has to end.
So he was also very smart and early to the Colleen Hoover thing in that he got the rights for this book 5 years ago before she had become a huge phenomenon. And it was part of this interest he had in feminism and male allyship.
So I can see how this fits in with how he's trying to brand himself. Like that TED Talk was called Why I'm Done Trying to Be Man Enough. Like he's really trying to step into this role.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted to be seen as Mr. Good Feminist. Even though feminism is about the empowerment of women, he was happy to be the male face of it.
So the movie was released in August, and right away, fans honed in on Lively. Some noted she seemed to be too lighthearted in her promotion of a film about domestic violence. She was doing things like promoting her new hair care line or encouraging fans to wear floral prints to the movie.
I think you can sort of see the strategy behind that, in that she didn't maybe want it to seem like this movie was such a downer. She wanted to make it seem like, you know, an event that's worth leaving your house for. And also, I think there was some notion of showing that women who have domestic violence happen to them, they don't have to be defined by that. It's part of their story, but they have other interests, and that doesn't have to define them. There's a genre of movies that are upsetting, but also sort of cathartic. And I just felt like that conversation was sort of hijacked by social media and became very unnuanced. I mean, she's not a criminal for choosing to promote it in this way that maybe you wouldn't have chosen to.
How successful was the movie?
It was definitely a huge hit. I think it made over $300 million worldwide. And it's on Netflix now, and I think also doing really well there.
But last month, Lively herself reignited the firestorm. The actor sued Baldoni and his PR team and the movie's producer, Jamie Heath, alleging that Baldoni and Heath sexually harassed her and that Baldoni then launched a smear campaign against her. On the sexual harassment side, Lively claims that Baldoni and Heath did things like discuss their porn addictions on set, and that Heath showed Lively a video of his wife naked, giving birth.
There are sort of a litany of examples that are named in the lawsuit, but basically Blake Lively just cites a number of examples that made her feel uncomfortable on set. And some of it was things like she alleges Baldoni and or the producers sort of would barge in on her in her fitting room unannounced when she was changing or when she was breastfeeding or pumping. And then in the filming of scenes themselves, she alleges that Baldoni sort of pushed her boundaries where if they were filming a love scene, maybe they had agreed and blocked it out a certain way, but he would take it further without telling her. He would be kissing her more or whispering to her in ways that they had not rehearsed. So it's a bunch of examples like that.
Yeah. And then there's this allegation that basically production shut down on this film. Writers Guild strike happens. And before it started back up again, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, her husband, have this meeting with the production staff where they basically come up with a document that's like, we feel so poorly about how things are being managed on set that we need a working document that is like, here's how people will behave. And it's pretty explicit. It's like, please don't show me naked pictures of your spouse. Please don't, do anything in a scene that we haven't choreographed beforehand. It seems pretty standard, but also notable that you would need to write all this down.
Yes. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, when you're at a pool and there's a sign that says no peeing in the pool, it's like, oh, someone definitely trying to be in there. Like,
Exactly.
or otherwise it wouldn't have to be stated. So, yeah, they held a meeting where they kind of went over all these demands, and it seems like both parties agreed, or at least in Lively's lawsuit, it seems like they both kind of signed off on that and agreed to move forward.
Yeah. Notably, there was also a no retaliation clause that was agreed to. And so the second part of Blake Lively's lawsuit is that basically Justin Baldoni, her co-star, and the producers violated the no retaliation clause by retaining PR professionals who, in their telling, saw it as their job to make Blake Lively look bad. What are they alleging these PR people did once the movie was out?
I mean, there's normal publicist stuff that they're alleging. Like they went to their sources at publications like the Daily Mail and Page Six and whatnot, and sort of tried to give their side of things, which would be slanted, pro Baldoni and against Lively. And then there's a newer sort of thing where they were trying to do an online campaign, and what form that takes is hard to say, but Lively's side alleges that it included astroturfing, which is essentially posting online or paying contractors or somehow motivating people to post online things that look organic but are not, are planted negative information about Lively. And it's hard to say, well, what were they doing to do that? Like, did they have control over the algorithm, or what are their methods? And we don't know completely.
One of the publicists that Justin Baldoni seems to have hired is this woman, Melissa Nathan. I know that she previously worked with Johnny Depp during his trial with Amber Heard, which seems to speak to a certain kind of public relations that she may be doing.
Yeah, it got a little attention even when she was hired. Why is Baldoni hiring this woman who has worked with Johnny Depp? And there are a lot of parallels between this situation and that one, where you have what looks like all these kind of nefarious online tactics that are being used to damage a woman's reputation. And in the case of Johnny Depp, they were very successful. Depp won his lawsuit, and Amber Heard's reputation online was significantly affected. And there's still a lot of doubt surrounding her and people who are very eager to trash her at any opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing we do seem to have is these text messages back and forth where you can see these PR people saying stuff like, Justin Baldoni wants to feel more protected by us and wants, evidence that we're going to really damage, essentially, Blake Lively's reputation. And, we can't say that out loud, that we'll do that. But of course, like, we'll do our job sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I got to say, the texts don't look great. Like, at one point, Baldoni's publicist says, we can bury anyone, which is pretty telling.
Yeah, they sound like mustache twirling villains saying stuff like that.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Carla only has the best tech.
Can't connect to network.
But she didn't have the best internet. So she got Cox multi-gig speeds to power all her... Now, all her tech is...
connected.
Exactly. Step it up with multi-gig speeds. Available everywhere. Only from Cox. 2 gig download speeds. Individual speeds vary. See Cox.com for details.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 40% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
I want to pivot to how Justin Baldoni has responded to all of this, because right after Blake Lively filed her lawsuit and the New York Times reporting came out, Baldoni and his team filed a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times, claiming defamation. He's basically alleging their reporting on the situation was one-sided. Can you explain what Baldoni is claiming in his lawsuit?
Yes. He is claiming that the Times basically took Blake Lively's word for all of these things without checking on any of them.
But I assume they would ask him. Like, that's their strategy, right? That's what they do.
Right. And they're also claiming that they asked his side, but they didn't give them enough time to respond, and that in the reporting process, they gave them a certain deadline and said, respond by noon, and then they published their story before noon arrived. I would say they did seemingly publish it early, but I mean, they also did respond. They included in the story, Baldoni's side had a statement, denying all of these things. And also, the lawsuit just accuses the Times of cherry picking the quotes to sort of leave out certain contexts that would show that Baldoni's side actually wasn't responsible, or they weren't talking in quite that way. And, the Times made it sound worse than it was. So his lawsuit includes a bunch of, further examples of text messages that expand on some of the conversations we've already seen. Like, he has an example of a text message conversation between himself and Lively where she says, "Oh, come on over to my trailer to discuss such and such. I'm just pumping." So he's like, "Look, she said I could come while she was pumping. What's the problem?" But I don't think, I looked at the lawsuit, I don't think all these things necessarily exonerate him. I mean, he has an example of her saying that one time. That doesn't give him permission to barge in on her anytime, forever, in perpetuity.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to see what each of these lawsuits leans into, because Blake Lively's lawsuit leans into the sexual harassment allegations and really pinpoints that as like, this was my concern, and here's all the ways that I made that known as this production was happening. Baldoni's lawsuit leans into editorial control over the film. And really, a lot of his lawsuit is taken up by the fact that he was pissed off that Blake Lively, at the end, basically made her own cut of the film. And that was the film that got released. And so to me, it was like, oh, it's clear there's a power struggle going on here. And that seems to be most important to him.
Yeah, I also noticed that his lawsuit emphasized the creative differences between them. And I mean, it's clear that they had a huge power struggle over the movie. And in his mind, she was trying to throw her weight around. And it's confusing. I don't understand how she got control of the film and how all of these things happened. But I think even so, it just seems like, well, he still could have been sexually harassing her. Like, I guess these could be just separate things. I mean, definitely they affect the other, but it just seems like the fact that they were having this big disagreement about the editing of the movie doesn't necessarily mean all the other stuff didn't happen too.
It is notable to me, though, as a journalist, which you and I both are, that the lawsuit Baldoni's filed here, I mean, he said he's going to sue Blake Lively, but the first lawsuit out of the gate was the New York Times. And that seems like an aggressive move to me. In recent months, we've seen Donald Trump sue news organizations for stories he doesn't like, even when it doesn't seem like there's a legitimate defamation claim. Do you think Baldoni's lawsuit here fits into a broader cultural context that's important to pay attention to?
Yeah, I do think it's somewhat scary for him to be coming after the New York Times so baldly. And I mean, if you read the lawsuit, like, they're basically crying fake news and saying the sorts of things that Donald Trump says, where it's like, oh, you can't trust anything the Times says anymore. And look how this once illustrious outlet has fallen. And I think it is a little scary in that way. But I've been pleased to read that most legal experts seem to think that the case doesn't have much of a chance of being successful. I mean, you never know, but I think experts are sort of taking it more as a PR move than an actual serious lawsuit.
If you scroll through TikTok now, I'm a little curious if things have shifted. Because there had been so many TikToks in the summer that were just anti-Blake Lively stuff. And it's unclear, as we've said, whether that was organic, planted, whatever. But it was certainly all over the place. But now, I'm not sure if the inverse is true. I'm not sure if you scrolled TikTok whether there'd be a ton of anti-Justin Baldoni stuff out there, or whether it's really the Blake Lively stuff has lived on and what that means.
Yeah, I think there were some posts on social media, on TikTok, on other places that I was gratified to see did acknowledge, oh, I got it wrong. I fell for this whole hate campaign. And I think there's some conversation about that. But there also does seem to be a lot of people who are still on Justin's side or think that his lawsuit shows that he's still right.
So what was it like working with Blake Lively on the set of It Ends With Us? Justin Baldoni dropped a number of text messages with crew members detailing just how difficult Blake Lively was to work with. Baldoni claims that since
So
day
I
one of
do think that this did lasting damage to Blake Lively's career because, I mean, even if best case scenario, if she wins, I mean, you can't undo someone seeing that interview of her being rude and this sort of ambient impression that is formed that she's difficult, or it's really hard to undo that.
Yeah, it's just so funny. It's like, is being rude equivalent to talking about your porn addiction on set and, showing a video of your wife giving birth? I'm just sort of like, these two things are not equivalent, but I get the sense right now they're being treated equivalently.
Definitely. And I think this is exactly the kind of conversation that is hard to have online because people are not good at talking about how those things are different. And that doesn't mean both sides are bad. One side is clearly worse. And it's just hard to, I guess, in the space of a really quick TikTok or a short post, make that sort of point.
Heather, I'm really grateful for your time and for walking me through the story. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Heather Schwedel is a staff writer here at Slate. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.